I was hoping the mic wouldn't work because I wanted to tell the story that happened just last week. I was at the Gates Foundation. And you would think of all the places in the world that technology would work. And it was so vindicating. That Windows crashed in the middle of the presentation. Schadenfreude is not one of those words that you really take great pleasure in, but that one. So I wanted to start first with, well, I want to start and end with two stories today. The first story is about PowerPoint. I hate it. I absolutely despise PowerPoint, but I'm going to subject you to it anyway. But one of my rules, one of the things I get to do within the foundation is teach people how to use PowerPoint. And it often occurs to me, as they say, those that can't do, teach. A couple of years ago, we had a group come in and present to the foundation an economic development project that we were involved in, multi-million-dollar. And they came in with at least 200 slides on the slide deck. And you know the rules, right? It's short number of slides, maybe 3 points on a slide. They had 12, maybe 20 points on a slide. And I was not looking forward to it, having vetted it beforehand and tried to advise them not to do it. He said, no problem. And then when they set it up, they had it read by the screen reader. So it was Stephen Hawking's voice. Or I swear, it was 2 hours. So every time I start to do a presentation, I go through that in my mind, and I delete the 50 extra slides. You guys are going to thank me for this. So, as you can see, I've entitled this, The 5 Challenges of Internet 3.0. Don't worry, I'm going to tell you what Internet 3.0 is before I tell you about the challenges. As near as I can tell, really, there are about 20 challenges, but I tried to narrow it down to 3, or to 5, or maybe 6. So it gets a little confusing, but I'll try to keep the numbers straight. And I want you to notice the lower right-hand corner. The one thing I said when asked if I would do a presentation here for you today is that I said that I would not talk about social media. No Facebook, no YouTube, no Twitter, or what I call FYT, or This is not about Web 2.0 at all. So before we jump into this, let me give you a little background, because everybody asks all the time. I'm with the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, and that's cars, not fruit. Not applesauce, not apple juice, it's General Motors. So Charles Stewart Mott was a major shareholder in General Motors, founded the foundation in 1926 with $300 million in General Motors stock. Based in Flint, Michigan. And if you see the little red arrow there? It's just a little pointer on it. The little red arrow there? That building in the background, that's the Mott Foundation building. That light on in that building in the background is my office. I'm sure. Absolutely positive. My wife pointed that out to me when making a comment about the hours that I work. This, by the way, is the opening scene from Semi-Pro. Seen that?
Yeah.
Flint, Michigan. I was an extra in that. I got left on the cutting room floor, but I was in the bar scene. Just to give you an idea. At Mott Foundation, I'm responsible for information technology and responsible for the archives. I sum up my job as if you can read it, file it, scan it, plug it in, or if it has buttons. It's mine. That includes the exercise equipment because they program it. I also have a second job, and I've had both of these 2 jobs at the same time for almost 20 years now. Mott graciously agreed when I was hired to dedicate 20% of my time to the nonprofit sector. So I'm supposed to increase the capacity of the nonprofit sector. And I've been working with organizations, entities, nonprofits, 20% of the time, to try to help further the capacity of what it is we do. In that role, I helped start M10. Helped start a group called TAG, which is the Technology Affinity Group of the Council on Foundations. I'm a part-time CIO to the European Foundation Center, which is an excuse to travel to Brussels. Right now, my big projects are standards. Standards for the nonprofit sector. Now, this is not performance standards, but data standards. The first one we did is called H-Grant, sometimes known as GrantsFire, which is a standard communications protocol and data definition for the communication of grant information. It's pretty simple. It took us, 6 years to get done. And it is quite literally who got how much money to do what. And that's what we do, and we feed it into the Foundation Center. It's all automatic, machine to machine. My current project is called OPDX, which is the Open Philanthropic Data Exchange. And that's pie in the sky right now, but we hope to come up with a series of definitions that define a grant and how you apply for it, to move that process along a little bit easier. It's a project that I'm in cahoots with GuideStar, so that when a foundation could sit down and begin to prepare a grant, we push a button and it just sucks all the information in magically. I'm all about magic. The foundation is a great place to work. Oops, wrong way. We fund in 4 areas. We fund in, that are all misnomers. We fund in civil society, which is really about the creation of philanthropic infrastructure, mostly in Central and Eastern Europe and in South Africa, and a little bit about the philanthropic infrastructure in the U.S. Groups like Independent Sector, Council on Foundation, GuideStar, support centers, things like this. We fund in the environment, which is really about, don't ask me how we call it environment, it's really about the international flow of capital, money, world trade, gas, things like that. So it's called the environment, and a little bit about fresh water in the Great Lakes because of where we're based. We fund in what's called poverty, which is nothing really to do with poverty. Oh, it is. I guess it is. It's really about after-school programs, a whole lot about after-school programs, and about ways to get out of poverty. And right here, I wanted to make take a bet that at least, I'd say 80% of you have actually seen my boss talk about our programs and about after-school funding. Believe me? So, I want you to throw your mind back a few years, and there was a press conference where a fellow got up there and said, I did not have sex with that woman. That was a press conference announcing the $55 million after-school initiative. My boss is behind this at the time where our servers crashed that day from some of the hits. Our phone system crashed that day from some of the phone calls. I never knew that that kind of publicity was that good. So, let me give you a little bit of obligatory background about me as well. Before coming to the foundation, I was with a technology services co-op, like a food co-op, only we bought and sold technology services. Telephone systems, telephone services, long distance, data lines, and private email. There was no internet. In fact, we were put out of business by the internet. The one claim to fame I have there is that while at this co-op, it was called TCN, we created the model that we called the circuit writer. And this was a grand scheme of mine. After having worked with nonprofits for close to 10 years, trying to do their technology, the one thing I discovered, I'm a little tense at times, it took me 10 years to figure out that while they need it, they won't pay for it. And so we came up with a bright idea. Well, why don't we go where the money is? And we get foundations to sponsor us to do technology for the nonprofits to help their grantees. The grand idea, and it went a little bit forward. It's still kind of struggling along in the U.S. I think it's still a good idea, but it helped birth some of the other institutions that are out there now, including NTIP. Before that, and this is a little bit embarrassing, I was what's called a futurist. Most of you probably are too young to remember, so I won't bore you with it, but a long, long time ago, I helped write a book about the future. And let me tell you, the one real advantage about being a futurist is usually you're out of town by the time the things come true. Or not. So, one thing I wanted to show is, this is a quote. This is from an article I wrote in 1979. How many here were born after 1979? Well, half. A third. Here, I'll read this for you. I wrote this for the Business Roundtable. I was at that time a consultant to the American Council on Life Insurance. Why was the American Council on Life Insurance interested in the future? They were afraid that people would start not fearing death. If you don't fear death, you don't buy life insurance. So they hired me as a futurist, and I wrote a series of pieces on the coming boom of what I call communications. Merging of computers and communications. Now, the first lesson you should learn from that is I should not be allowed to invent words. But I did. And here it is. Just as our past was shaped by industrial technologies, so our future will be formed by new communications technologies. Actually, a better word may be communications technologies, because we are currently witnessing the coupling of computers and communications. The coupling of those technologies expected to result in the birth of the home computer, the video center, the center may be the first offspring of a media revolution. I put this up here because it's pretty good. And because it occurred to me when I first found this again, that's Courier 10. Selectric 3. I typed that. Pretty good. It also illustrates a point. So one of the things that my mentor, the man that I worked with when I was a futurist, taught me was that you can tell that you're at a cusp, a time of change, a time that's in between, because the words stop working. And we start inventing new ones. We've been doing this for a long time. We often start describing the present by what it is not. We've done this with postmodern, not modern, so it's something else after. Post-industrial. We did it with Web 2.0. It's not Web 1.0. It doesn't really say what it is. It says what it isn't. This is a time like that, where we don't have the words to describe what we're doing, and we're actually beginning to make them up. That's why I made up Internet 3. Again, I didn't learn the lesson from communications, so Internet 3.0. It's a time when you look at phrases that at their base value don't make any sense. And my favorite is, I Googled that on my BlackBerry. These words don't really make any sense, but yet we understand what they mean. It's a time that we've defined by what it is not. So, across the years, I've made a series of presentations about the internet and what's happened in those years. And the first one, I'd like to point out, this is the history of the internet in 4 lines. 8 lines, sorry. This is lines. The internet was born sometime between 1960 and 1990. Most of that was supercomputers talking to each other, and most of what we moved was either mail or files. Then, this was my favorite speech that I used to give in the 90s. The internet gets big. We invented the web. It was all about transactions. In 2000, it started to be people. And the internet got bigger. And then, starting August 2010, the next internet got more. For a moment here, let me talk a little bit about numbers. And this is my teachable moment, right? I have trouble with numbers with people all the time. How many of you have ever tried to explain that when you make a picture smaller, it doesn't really get smaller? Right? You work in IT, they've embedded 15 multi-megabit pixels in a Word document. You can't figure out why it's 10 gigabytes large. Because people don't understand size. So I try in every presentation I make to talk about numbers, talk about what big is. So currently, today's internet is measured at 2,000 yottabytes. How many know what a yottabyte is? It's not what yottabyte is. Yeah. So a yottabyte is 1,000 exabytes. No, a yottabyte is 1,000 zettabytes, which is 1,000 exabytes, which is 1,000 petabytes, which is 1,000 terabytes. And some of us now have terabytes. So a terabyte is about 50,000 trees if you printed out one page of text on paper. It's huge, absolutely huge. We're about 2,000 yottabytes right now. We're about to double. Next 2 years will be 4,000 yottabytes. I've yet to figure out how to explain bigness. What's happened on August 10th, 2010, and it was a Tuesday. Any idea what happened that day? That was the first day that there were more things on the internet than people. That was the day that Internet 3 was born. It is the Internet of Things. Now I want to take you back. This isn't a new idea that machines are going to be talking to machines. But the Internet of Things, born on August 10th, really occurred to me, strangely enough, in 1982, when I read an article about a Coke machine in the Mojave Desert that had been installed with a phone line so that it could call up to say what it was doing. Next week, I was doing a conference in Silicon Valley, and I met with a bunch of bankers who explained to me that they were putting their ATMs on a packet network because they had discovered a security flaw, that they only had 3 phone numbers that the ATMs could call to register transactions, and hackers could try to do 4 or more transactions at once and thereby drain money out of the same account without getting it back out to the central server. And I thought, great. Machines are going to be talking to machines. I then pitched this to John Nesbitt for the book Megatrends. I said, there's an 11th megatrend. And I called it, we're going to move from sampling things to actually monitoring things. And he said, there's only 10. I said, why 10? Good enough for most. So, I pitched it again as an idea to N10, or N10's Change Journal, where I said, the internet, the web, it's like a lava lamp. And they laughed at me again. I shouldn't be allowed to name things. But this is all about machine-to-machine communications. Now, by 2022, the average household is expected to have 50 internet-connected devices. So I went out and I did what's called bad social research. I looked at myself. I counted up what's in my house. This is my Internet of Things. I have 25 internet-connected devices in my house. Cisco says that the Internet of Things is about 10 to 1 right now. I think they're really underestimated. They say by the end of this decade there will be 50 billion things on the internet. There will only be 4 billion people on the internet. 50 billion, they're underestimated. There'll be 75, maybe 100 billion. Right now, at my house, for example, my thermostat is on the internet. And if we wanted to, we could do it here. We could connect to it across the web, and I could turn the heat up and torch it off. I could change the channel on the TV, which I have done, just to see what it could do. My thermostat, my gas meter, the electric meter, my Kindle, another Kindle, a couple of droids, Windows Phone, a couple of PCs, Server 2012, Windows Home Server, Linux Server. Perhaps I'm a little strange. But welcome to the Internet of Things. And let me give you an idea of the things that are going to be on the Internet. First, for example, let's take the cars. The S-Class Mercedes has more computers in it than an Airbus 320. How many of you guys got S-Class? Me neither. But transportation, already buses, taxis, cars, highways, the Internet of Things. How many of you use navigation devices like Waze or Teletrip, Google Traffic? Right? How do they measure the traffic? All the others. They track your cell phone. When your cell phone and 100 other cell phones are moving smoothly down the highway, they know the highway traffic is moving. Thermostat, oh, the Google self-driving car. So the other day I was in Silicon Valley and driving down towards Google and with a friend, and he passed the Google self-driving car, which is very noticeable. It has a thing on top. And he said, "Do you want to have fun?" I said, "Sure." And he goes, "Watch this. You pull up close to the car, it changes things. Pull up behind it, it speeds up. Get in front of it, slow down, it slows. You can herd the Google. Apparently, teenagers go out, get 3 cars, and they herd it places where it doesn't want to go. Vacuum cleaners, Roombas are on the Internet. Refrigerators, I don't know why. This comes up as an example for decades. We're going to put our fridge on the Internet. We're going to put our fridge on the Internet. I really don't know why. Closets going to be on the Internet. Payments are on the Internet. My smart thing here, it's not really a phone. I don't use a phone. It's a thing. Has what's called NFC, near field communications. You tap it and it will make a payment in a Starbucks. I'm looking forward to the next generation of pickpockets. We just take the money away. Medicine, we will take implantable pills and sensors. They will go into us and stay and monitor things. Payments, absolutely. Cows. Apparently, cows have been equipped with cell phones, so they can text, I suppose. People are things too. There are already networked tattoos. So you have an imprint put on you that has RFID that will connect to the net. The Internet of Things. It's a new world where machines talk to machines, and we're only part of it. Consequently, this is my favorite cartoon of all time. You've all seen it, right? On the Internet, no one knows you're a dog. Trouble with this cartoon, this is 1993, it's wrong. On the Internet, everyone knows you're a dog, and in fact, they know what kibble you eat. Studies have shown that you need only 4 data points, 4 unique data points to identify a person on the Internet. Your browser leaks more than that during any session. 4 identifying points. When I was out at the Gates Foundation, I was meeting with the Microsoft CIO, chatting about things. And one of the stories he told me was that they had, with people's permission, run a study on how much they could tell from passive monitoring of a smartphone. Not looking at the content, not looking at the messages that are sent, but rather at the accelerometer and the GPS. And guess what they can tell? They can tell what sex you are from monitoring the accelerometer of your smartphone. Why? Men walk differently than women. And so the gait affects the accelerometer. They can pick 99% accuracy. They can tell how many children you have. Any idea?
The number of times you saw.
It's the number of places you go in the morning and in the afternoon, picking kids up and dropping them off, and the places you go on the weekends, soccer. They can tell how many you have and how old they are because of the change in activity. All our data sets are not anonymous, even if you're told that they are. Everyone knows who you are, and on the Internet of Things, the things know who you are. In this Internet of Things, I've come up with 5 challenges, and I've tried to come up with a mnemonic, and I did the Sarah Palin trick by writing it on. And as you will notice, in the 5 challenges of the Internet of Things, I have 20. So the big 5 challenges of the Internet of Things are, let's see if I can do this, and the acronym is TEPSU. Good? Okay. And by the way, let's think about this just a little bit. The Internet today only works because it's underutilized. If we utilized it to its full extent, it would come crashing to its knees. Already, 70% of all the messages sent in this country are spam. 50% of the bandwidth is eaten up by 2 things. Can you guess what they are? Name the company. Any idea? Sorry?
Prozac.
No. That's the spam.
Prozac spam.
I'm saying 50% of the bandwidth is eaten up by 2 things. One is Netflix, the other is YouTube. 50%. We will bring it to its knees if we ever really start using this stuff. So these challenges, this TEPS, I shouldn't be allowed to name things, right? Trust, expectation, privacy, security, and understanding. 5 challenges of the Internet of the world. Let's look at these individually. The challenge of trust. I don't think you can really see this, but this is a little piece of research that I've done myself. So I'm on Facebook. Yeah, have to be. And I can predict with 100% accuracy that I will get fish 2 days after I do a posting. So y'all know what phishing is, right? So targeted attempt to get me to click a link. So when I post something, and my friend Lois DeBacher, who is the program vice president at the Kresge Foundation, likes it, 2 days later, I get a phishing message every single time. Because there is a bot, there's a machine out there watching the activity on Facebook between any 2 people. And it spoofs her name and sends me a phishing message. So 2 days after I post something, I get a message from Lois that says, click this link, you like the video. She's not sending it. Now the issue here is that we used to tell all our users, don't click on links from people you don't know. Well, now I have to tell my users, don't click on links from people you do know. The issue is trust. How do we know who's who? How do I know you're human? How do we establish a level of trust in a digital world that's fraught with this kind of communication? How can I trust you? How can I convince you that I'm human? How can you convince me? This is an issue that will occupy more space and time than we can seriously imagine. We need a whole new level of trust and identity. These are issues that you're going to fight with nonprofits. The second is what I call the challenge of expectation. And I blame Google for this challenge. And I'm going to use a more current example. So last Monday, I have to express this first. So last Monday I was watching Morning Joe, and I was listening to the pundits get outraged about Obamacare. By the way, I shouldn't call it Obamacare. It is really nothing to do with the care and feeding of Obama. It's the Affordable Care Act. So they were complaining about the Affordable Care Act, and one of the pundits said, "This is outrageous. Why don't they just get 5 guys from California and get them to fix it?" And I thought, expectations. Google has given us this level of expectation that everything is easy. How much do you think they spent to come up with the simplicity that is Google? You can type a word in. I've spent the last 3 months within the foundation designing digital document management systems. It is hellacious to come up with acceptable metadata taxonomical standards that everybody agrees to. And so I have a very complicated scheme. We want to code it this way, we work in ethnicity and race and genetic bypass surgery. It is phenomenally difficult to generate simplicity. But yet we have an expectation. This is driven by the consumerization of IT. That we have created so many devices that deliver simplicity that as IT professionals, we now have to meet those expectations. With the drive for bring your own device, the one failure of bring your own device, the recession's in this today, right, is it doesn't come with bring your own support. We expect more. The next one is the challenge of privacy. Already, you can see this. How many have seen the commercial for Progressive Insurance? You can sign up for their system that will lower your costs by putting a monitor in your car. So they will track where you drive, how fast you drive, how often you drive. And then lower your rates. We have voluntarily given up our privacy to save $10 a month. An incredible wealth of information, and we're doing that with Fitbit, with Waze. We give away the data. Every phone made in the US in the last 10 years is trackable, whether it has quote-unquote GPS or not. We have given up our privacy. You might ask, what's the difference between privacy and security? Privacy is something you can give up. Security is something that is usually violated. When we willingly disclose things, we give up our security. There is a challenge of security as well. And I think here Edward Snowden, whether you like him or not, you agree with what he did or not, has done us a favor. We now know that everything we do and everything we say and everything we say to anybody is watched. Least you think this doesn't apply to you. I have a cautionary tale to tell. I can't tell you who this is because they really don't want to know that they got so badly hacked. But it is a foundation like me. And I used to believe, who would want to hack a foundation? We got nothing, right? We don't really even have the money we give away. We got nothing. They can hack in and look at a whole bunch of grant proposals and a whole bunch more grant denials. That's about it. And the reports you guys send in, which I'm sure there's not a real big market for that kind of stuff. So I said, well, I never thought myself a risk until I heard this story. This is a friend of mine, a fellow CIO. And they got contacted by the FBI within the last couple of months and told that they were under what's called advanced persistent threat. I never even heard of it. And advanced persistent threat is when it's state-sponsored. So a country that will remain nameless, called China, had infiltrated their systems. Owned, 100% owned them. Phone system, voicemail system, computer systems, and they're a global enterprise, every office. They knew every social security number. They had all the personnel records, everything. And I said, what for? And they said, it's incredibly valuable. They know where we're going to make grants, which have an economic impact. They know all the stuff there is to know about all the people, and they're a relatively politically controversial foundation. They couldn't talk about it because they were so wholly owned. They couldn't talk about it. They couldn't send email about it. They couldn't talk on the phone. They had to set up a whole separate system until one day, unannounced, they couldn't even tell staff about it. They shut everything off. They went black for 4 days, rebuilt everything from the ground up. During the entire time, they were dreadfully afraid that the hackers would discover that they had been discovered. And the FBI said, if they find out, you will never get rid of it. They will make it so persistent. And I'm sure you're saying, it's not us, they're not going to do that. Now, because of this, it's common practice, at least in the foundation community, that if you're traveling to China, you take a disposable phone. You don't take your own stuff. Because this foundation actually discovered theirs had been replaced. So they left an iPhone in a hotel room, they came back with an iPhone, looked like their iPhone, they got back to the States, the serial number even knew. It's a phenomenal story. Oh my God. We now prohibit people from taking USB cables to charge their smartphones because you plug those into those nice little kiosks in the airport, that's a signal. You don't want them owned. So we have to do disposable, it sounds terrible, disposable laptops. They're not really disposable, we just wipe them when we come back. And we prohibit any connections back, which makes work really difficult. But it's the price of living in the world of Internet 3. Finally, I call the fifth challenge, who, what, where. Or whose, what, is where. Here, the story I want to tell you is about a colleague of mine who works with the foundation, works with a lot of outside groups. And so to make his life easier, he went out on his own, purchased 100 gigabytes of Dropbox. Puts all his stuff in there. And because it's really convenient, puts all his wife's business stuff in there. And he shares bits and pieces of it out with the rest of the world that is working on projects, sharing this folder, share that folder. He's got 100 gigabytes because nothing to worry about, right? So one day he's working on his machine, and Dropbox is very nice and chats to you, and there's a little message saying, deleting file. Deleting file. And he watched as his files just disappeared. And of course he called me. My files are disappearing. I said, well, you put them in Dropbox, what do you expect? No, I didn't say that. I said, oh. So it's part of the way Dropbox works. When you share storage, it eats into the person's storage a lot. So he had 100 gigabytes, but he shared a folder with someone who only had 5. So he shared 10 gigabytes, and so they were constantly getting messages saying, you're over storage, buy some more. Instead of buying some more, they decided to delete his file for his. Luckily, we have backups. What we have done over the last couple of years with the creation of cloud storage, we've been pushing this way for years. First, we had local drives. People couldn't figure out where stuff was on the internet anyway. Then we put network drives out there, and they were somewhere on the network. And we did like distributed file systems, which now is flying all over the world. And then we did cloud storage. People having a clue where this stuff is. Who's what is where? That's a challenge for us to be able to handle because the expectation is simplicity. And that's really what I call the challenge of understanding. And this is the confluence of all these challenges of trust, of expectation, consumerization of IT, the understanding of the systems and services that we use today, the understanding of the interconnectedness of our things and ourselves and our businesses and our loved ones and our home data. We all believe there's an app for that. And unfortunately, there isn't. We don't understand what we don't understand. I'm here today to tell you that number one is that it is impossible to keep up with today's technology. Impossible. I'm supposed to. I can't. Technology changes so fast and will change so faster in the future. We want big data, but we haven't a clue how to use it. There's not an app for that. Consumerization has taught us it should be simple, and our skills have not caught up. And the answers to these challenges, unfortunately, are new. And I'm not just trying to explain the room. If we're going to survive this new Internet of Things, 75 billion devices talking about us to each other, we have got to lead. We've got to up our game. Because it's not about the plumbing anymore. Of the groups in this room, how many run your own email systems? You're fools. Outsource that. There's someone out there that can do it faster and cheaper. Go to Google, go to Microsoft. It's a commodity. The same is true with most of your infrastructure. It is not about the plumbing anymore. This is a bad analogy. It's not about the plumbing, it's about what moves through the plumbing. That's not really good analogy. We have got to up our game in the nonprofit sector. We really do. For all too long, we've been concerned about the interconnection, about plugging our routers in, about making the PCs work. That's a commodity. You should buy that service. You can buy it cheaper. Doesn't look that, but it is. We need to be strategists, not plumbers. We need to build the bridge between what is technically possible and what needs to be solved. You have to help to build that bridge of understanding. You will need to become the interlocutors. When users are stymied by what they know they don't know, you need to be able to extract and understand business processes. It's not about how to use Word, it's how to use Power Pivot, how to analyze data, how to look at data. And most of us need to up our skills because most of us came out of that plugging it together, making sure the routers work. It's here too that nonprofits have to lead because government has pulled out of the business of the production and distribution of information. It's what we do more than anything else. We produce information. We analyze it. We distribute it. We're in the business of protecting the common good, of protecting human rights, working for the social good. We are in the business of the production and distribution of information. Traditional media is not going to help because they're busy disappearing. This is our task, and we need to up our game. That means you need to. Now, I want to end on a little story about horses. I was on a flight to Brussels. You know, when you first start off, drop the screen and they show the safety video, right? With the lady that goes, no smoking or disabling things. I should know it by heart, but I don't. Well, as it came on, watching the video screens, I was looking around the cabin, and the two flight attendants were standing on either side, right where they used to stand when they did. Right? They used to hold up the seatbelt, show you how to talk about it, just 4 doors back, 3 doors forward, look behind them. So I watched the video, I watched the flight attendant, watched the video, watched the flight attendant. And after it was all done, I got bored. I asked the flight attendant over, I said, why are you standing there? And she looked at me and she said, make sure you were listening. And I said, come on. She goes, no, but that's what we're supposed to do. And suddenly I knew exactly what she was doing. She was doing what's called hold the horse. This dates back to just after the Boer War. The French were interested in increasing the proficiency of the firing of a field artillery piece. So they hired a time and motion expert to help them. How could they do this faster? Time and motion expert came and watched, and there were 5 guys involved in this process, right? Loading, tamping, aiming, firing. And during the process, 2 of these 5 guys, after they had done some stuff, stepped back and stood there. Gun was fired, and then they went back to work. And he said, what are those guys doing? Why are they standing? Nobody knew. So we looked closer. So we finally found an old field artillery colonel, and he goes, oh, I can tell you what they're doing. They're holding the horses. There were no horses. This was a mechanized artillery piece. It was hauled behind a truck. But they had not changed from the time when they used to have to hold the horses to keep them from bolting. Those 2 flight attendants were holding horses, right? That's what they used to do. They were standing there waiting to put the snap together to tell us where the exits were. We nonprofits hold a lot of horses. Throughout our organizations, we fail to make changes, or we make a change and fail to anticipate the other ones. My favorite is, and I will tell this, and I will even name the name, it's the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. I consulted them for a while in workflow processing, and we were talking about how the grants get through the system. And they said, well, we do this, we do this, we send this letter, and then it goes to blue. And blue was its status. And I said, blue? I could understand red, green, blue. Nobody knew why it was called blue, or why it went into this process. It went into blue, and then finally it changed and became green. And so finally I went back to a friend of mine who had been there for about 20 years, and I said, blue, why blue? He said, well, that's when we make the carbon copy. I said, carbon copy? Blue. We do the same thing at the Mott Foundation. We go to red. And it's the color of the folder that it used to go in when it was going to get put. We are holding horses. We won't change those systems. We won't look beyond what we used to do. Unfortunately, Internet 3 will change all that. When we connect these devices, when we begin interacting machine to machine, already most of what used to be done by a variety of humans, and I get no end of trouble for this, is now done machine to machine with the foundation. Every grant we make, the minute it's approved, I tweet. I don't tweet it. It tweets itself. Lo and behold, I discovered that we should slow it down a little bit because we forgot to tell the people who got the grant before I tweet. Every month, I tell the Foundation Center exactly how many grants we made and how much money it was. I know. The machine knows. How about it? The machines are talking to each other. The machines are changing the way we do things. And the machines are going to generate more data about what we do than we know what to do. And we don't understand it. So it's time to up our game. It's time to get out of the plumbing, or get out of the plumbing and go to the next level. So if you don't outsource your services and systems now, you should. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, you'll be happier. You don't have to worry about backups of Exchange anymore. You run Exchange. Yeah. It's the happiest day of my life. We have to let go of the horses. So I'd love to take questions. I'd love to talk about absolutely anything. I'll tell you predictions for the future if you have. I won't be right, but I'll be out of town. Any of you?
Anybody have any questions for Gavin? No? Guess not. Gavin, thank you.